And welcome back, everyone, to Entrepreneuring, the show where I, Garrett Weinzierl, sit down with an entrepreneur and talk about what it is that they do. My guest this week is a podcaster, a streamer, a very close friend of mine. You can find her work over at jossplays.com or at amove.tv. Jocelyn, this is strange because I talk to you so regularly, and it's never as an interview. So welcome. Thank you for agreeing to do this.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I'm excited. So I've heard your story before, and as we were just talking about off the air, I heard it recently, and apparently I didn't remember that I heard it recently because you and I actually we do multiple podcasts together, and we record a lot of stuff within a week. So what listeners probably don't realize is we don't always retain a whole lot from the shows that we do.
Pretty much, I'd say like maybe 5%. I remember
Probably.
hi, I'm Jocelyn, and you can find me here, and that's about it.
I remember laughing a lot for things that most people, like the vast majority of people around the globe, would not find funny. That's the thing I take away the most from most of the shows that we do together. So let's talk about how you got here. How did you start podcasting? Because you now do this full time. You like a lot of us, myself included, when you started podcasting, you had a day job, you had other commitments. It wasn't the thing that you were pouring, all of your time into, and it was your full time job, and now it is. But let's talk about how we got there. So when did podcasting start for you?
I started podcasting probably about 4 years ago now. Originally, I was just kind of a podcast fan. I used to hang out in live chats all the time, and I would kind of help in contributing to the community as much as I possibly could. And then, so I guess the hosts of the different podcasts that I was listening to, and I'm sure Garrett has probably mentioned the Frog Pants community before once or twice, but that was the community that I was a part of. And one of the hosts actually had to go on early unexpected maternity leave, and they needed someone to fill in. So I was one of the community members that got pulled in to actually do an episode of what was then and is no longer, sadly, Ladies of Leet. And it was basically just a podcast of women talking about video games. And it was so much fun. And then one of the other people in the community named Ryan Murphy, who is now currently my co-host, reached out to me and said, look, we talk all the time in the chat room. I'm a big fan of everything that Frog Pants does. I just heard you on Ladies of Leet. Do you want to, just start a podcast? He had some previous podcasting experience just in university and stuff, throwing together little things on campus sort of thing, and wanted to start something of his own. So we decided that it might be kind of cool to just give it a shot. And that was 4 and almost a half years ago now, actually.
How the time flies.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. So I guess it's been, oh my God, I've been doing this since like October 2011.
Yeah. If I think back to when I started podcasting, it's mildly terrifying. I mean, I started podcasting out of my closet of an apartment in Los Angeles when I was living out there after having just finished college in Florida, and saying to myself, you should move to LA. Not because it's the smart thing to do, but because if you wait any longer, you probably won't ever get the chance to live out there. Because I can tell you now, I'm not moving anywhere without a job anymore. That's a terrible idea. Why would I do that? So what was it like when you got started? I'm assuming, what was your day job when you and Ryan, was it the Gamers Inn, or did it have a different name?
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
it was Gamers Inn. Yeah.
Okay. So for our listeners who may not know, it's still going, and it is a general gaming show. I highly recommend it. Maybe a bit biased though, because it is on a website that I may run, but it's a good show. Highly recommend folks check it out. But so what was it like when you got it started? Because trying to teach yourself how to podcast, set that kind of schedule for yourself, and then also balance a normal job.
Yeah, it was pretty rough, actually. I was working for Ontario Parks at the time, so I have a background in geographic information systems, which is basically like GPS and mapping and all that kind of cool stuff. So that's what I was doing for Ontario Parks, and so I was traveling a lot. I was part of the Central Zone, so that basically took up this like huge, gigantic chunk of Ontario, and I was traveling to all the different parks and mapping their trails and mapping endangered species and all that kind of stuff. So I was constantly constantly on the road or out of even cell phone signal range. Like I was full on nature Joss at that point. So it was really, really difficult because I had this full-time job that it wasn't just 40 hours a week. Sometimes it was weekends. Like it was all over the place, kind of whenever we could get into the area that we needed to get into. And it was really hard to schedule actual timing for the show. And we had started doing a live stream of the show. So trying to build an audience around what was potentially a really crazy flexible schedule was really, really difficult. And that's like the number one thing that you have to do when you're starting out with any kind of internet venture, whether it be a podcast, a stream, a webcomic, whatever you're doing. Like you need a schedule. If people expect you to put content out on day X and you don't, then you're going to lose them. And you're going to lose them quickly when you don't have a big, huge backlog of content for them to kind of fall back on.
Yeah, I definitely, same thing, absolutely the same thing when I started podcasting with my friend Kyle. We kind of researched, it's like, okay, well, what do all the podcasters, what's the piece of advice we keep hearing from the same people over and over again? And it was set a schedule for yourself, whatever it is, whatever works for you, and then meet that deadline, week in and week out, or every other week and every other week out, whatever it may be. And the thing I found with that too, which I didn't really think of at the time, was forcing myself to be like, okay, it's Thursday, time to get this done. Knowing that was coming, I had to learn. It forced me to learn very quickly.
Time management and organization is such a huge thing, and it's so difficult the more things you stack up. Like now that we're doing Gamers In, we've got Angry Chicken going. I've got my own Twitch streaming that I'm doing with a whole bunch of different themes and different games. And it just, once you start kind of putting that stuff together, it's like, oh my God, okay, it's Monday. I have to do X, Y, and Z. And then it's Tuesday and I have to do all of those things plus this other thing because I have another show today. And, it really does snowball. So you have to stay on top of it and stay organized for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, again, this is kind of funny because I know for the most part your story and the order that things came in. Because if you were any other guest, I would be like, well, what came after that? How did you start streaming? But I know that turning it into a job almost came before you started pursuing streaming full time. That's kind of your most recent endeavor is starting to build up your Twitch.tv stream. So let's stop before that. At what point did you realize, hey, I might be able to make this my job?
Well, actually, it came completely out of Patreon. When Patreon launched as a service to support creators, it just completely changed the industry for us. So all of a sudden, we had a way to monetize the thing that we were doing without charging each and every person for the content. So we didn't all of a sudden have to put a price on what we were doing. It was just based on the pay what you want philosophy. So we had just a ton of people out of nowhere who all of a sudden were like, well, yeah, I enjoy this content. Of course I want to pay for it. And sometimes it's 25 cents an episode. Sometimes it's $5 an episode. It doesn't matter. All of it just kind of added up. And we had this great community willing to support us. And kind of before I knew it, I was like, well, I'm making like $1,500 a month. Can I live on that? I think I can live on that. So let's just YOLO and give this a try.
So to the students out there watching this, your advice to them is YOLO, give it a try?
Well, have some sort of income. Have a really, really good idea of exactly what your monthly expenses are going to be and how you can possibly kind of work around that. Like, what can you cut? What do you need to absolutely have? Do you have the income to support your needs? And then you just kind of go from there. So if you know that whatever you're doing, you can constantly keep up with it, then yeah, definitely give it a try. But you have to have that base. You have to have something coming in, especially with when you're looking at doing podcasting, streaming. And that's why I say like Patreon really changed the game, because it's a way that we can actually see like every month I know I'm going to have X number of dollars coming in from Patreon. When you're dealing just strictly with donations, that's when it gets really, really tricky, which is what most Twitch streamers kind of make their living on, is just stream donations. And that can be like, you can have a really great day and you can make hundreds of dollars, and then you can have a whole week where you make nothing. And there's no way to know week in and week out exactly what your income is going to be. And that's when it gets scary.
Yeah, because, I mean, going back to Patreon real fast, before Patreon was a thing, like you said, a lot of podcasts, we were having to resort to pretty lousy sponsorship deals that were like 100% commission based, and the commissions were not particularly fantastic.
Yep.
And there were things like Kickstarter, there were things like GoFundMe that some podcasters were trying to warp to their needs. But the problem is, for those watching who don't listen to podcasts or may not be familiar with the medium, it's been around for so long that the precedent has more or less just been set. The podcasts are free, and it's not something that should be behind a paywall. Some of the incredibly huge podcasters get away with it, but your average Joe can't. And also, podcasts are generally ongoing. They generally go on with really no end in sight, especially if it's news related in any way, shape, or form, which our shows are. So using something like Kickstarter, where you have to have a product at the end, it doesn't really work for an ongoing project. So all of a sudden, Patreon came out. It was an opt-in subscription service, and we were just kind of like, "Wow, this completely changed the game." So it was nice for that to come around. So yeah, I found myself in a similar point as you. You kind of hit that point when your goal is to take whatever it is that your hobby is, because this started out as a hobby for you and I.
Oh, 100%. And I found actually when I started doing Gamers In, that was when it was just a hobby. You know, it was one day a week. It was, you know, somewhere between an hour and 2 hours. I was sitting down with a friend and we were just talking about whatever video games we were playing and what was going on with the industry. And it was literally just like two friends sitting down and chatting. And then it kind of morphed from there into, now we've got a schedule, now we've got fans, now we've got a live stream. What are we going to do? What are we going to play? And then as you add more shows on top of that, then you have to do all of that, but multiple times in a week. And I found very quickly it snowballed into something that was more than a full-time job. I was working I ended up moving and doing something completely, totally different. And I was working, you know, Monday to Friday, 8 to 4 type hours. And then I would get home and I would have to nap and I would literally sleep for like an hour or two. And then I'd get up and then I'd have to do podcasting. And I would do podcasting from usually about 8 p.m., 7 or 8 p.m. until usually somewhere around 3 or 4 in the morning. And then I'd go to sleep and then I'd wake up and then I'd go to work at 8 a.m. and then I'd work for 8 hours and I'd come home and I'd nap. And I was basically like splitting my sleep in half and like doing half at like in the early morning and half in the late afternoon. And it was really unsustainable. So I got to the point where I was like, well, can I do this? Do I want to do this? Is this something that I think that I can actually make a contribution to the community, and is this going to be worthwhile not just for me but for my fans? Like, will the content that I'm putting out be better if I'm only focusing on creating content? And eventually I decided that the answer to that was yes, and now I'm no longer killing myself trying to do 2 full-time jobs, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's the point, right? There's a point, because we were all at that point where we were making some money, not necessarily the same amount as what our day job was providing, and we were kind of getting to that breaking point. It's like, well, I have to make a judgment call. Mm-hmm. Do I think I can make the amount of money that I'm making from my passion work and turn that into like my full-time job, turn that into my business, or can I not? And like you said, you know, if you can figure out exactly what you need to survive, to pay your bills, to, you know, whatever outstanding payments you may have, folks like me pay, you know, student loans. Mm-hmm.
Oh God, so much student loans.
Yeah, I actually didn't know if you still had student loans or not, so I didn't want to. Place that
I was
you.
one of those people that thought that like university was just the way to go. It was like, I was in high school. I had been in the gifted program, which is like the advanced program. I don't know if I'm Canadian, if you guys can't tell from the Toronto Maple Leafs flag behind me. But so yeah, we had this thing called the gifted program, which was like advanced. I don't know what you call it down there, but I'd been in that like all the way from elementary school, and I went all the way through that program. I had great marks. I was a really good athlete, and so it was just like blinders, like just university. And so I did 5 years of university because I actually did a thesis, and then I couldn't get a job. So then I went to college. So I have 6 years worth of post-secondary student loans. So I will be paying those probably until I'm about 50.
Yeah. I went to a private art college, so
Same
that's
difference.
That's going to take a while as well.
Yep.
It's going to take a while. May go to my grave with it. No. Let's not get morbid. Let's not go there. But so okay. So you make that decision. You make the jump. So now you are Jocelyn Moffett, and you introduce yourself as, I'm a podcaster and a streamer. Is that what, at parties when you meet someone new? Is that how you introduce yourself?
Pretty much. And 9 times out of 10, people have no idea what that is. And to me, I take that as a positive. I feel like I'm on the cutting edge of something. If you say what you're doing and people have no idea, you're doing it right. So yeah, you basically have to make what's almost like an elevator pitch. You have to be able to tell people what you do in like 30 seconds or less. Just like, I am a podcaster and a streamer. That means I do internet radio and I broadcast myself playing video games. And the reason that people actually care and pay attention is because I'm entertaining and charismatic and they like to listen to me.
Well, that's so much better than my explanation. Most people, I just like, I'm a graphic designer and I just go on my way. It's just like, technically,
you just don't even try.
Technically, I still do graphic design. It's not the main focus of what I spend my full time doing now, but when I don't want to have to sit there and explain to people, well, no. There's these things. People watch people play video games. That's a thing now. People play video games competitively for millions of dollars. That's also a thing that, like, I don't always feel energetic enough to explain all that. So I'm just kind of like, well, what's the normal thing that I kind of do sometimes? Well, that's what I'll tell them I do.
Yeah. See, I don't have that fallback anymore. So I had to very quickly figure out how I was going to basically sell myself and what I do to somebody very, very quickly, because people's attention span's really not that big. And most of the time people look at me, if I'm talking to an older generation, they like, the internet is email to them. So, you kind of have to explain everything. They might understand YouTube. And if they understand YouTube, you've got an in.
Yeah.
And then if you're talking to somebody who's part of like a younger generation, then they look at you like, oh man, the dream, like that must be so awesome. And yeah, it's cool, but it's a whole hell of a lot of work.
Yeah, there's trade-offs that I never expected. It's because that was always my goal for the last probably, I would say 4 years. I've been podcasting for 5 since year 1. When at the end of it, I was like, I guess I don't completely suck at this. When I had that realization, I was like, I want to find some way to make this a full-time gig. And 4 years after that, here I am. So my goal for so long was, I just want to work from home. I could get so much more done if I could work from home, and I was my own boss. And once that started, I realized, wow, this is actually, this is, for, let's quote Marty McFly. This is kind of heavy, Doc. It's if this is for like university students, that's going to go right over their heads. I'm sorry. I have faith. I have faith in the age bracket that go to college. But anyways, the big thing for me is it's hard for me to kind of turn it off, because when I worked at an office, it was, show up at 9, work till 5, come home, I'm done. Cool. Pop in a video game. Let's watch a movie with the wife. Do whatever we want to do, but you can't, but now I work out of my home. I'm in my home all the time. Mm-hmm. I'm not really coercing with other humans on a daily basis. And I never thought that would affect me, but it is. Like, I'll notice myself at 9 o'clock at night after I've eaten dinner watching something in Comedy Central, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I have this to do, and if I should just go do it now, because otherwise I'm going to have a lot to do in the morning. And it's hard to keep that in check and keep myself a sane human being. Have you found similar issues?
Absolutely. I'm obviously working from home now as well, and it's very difficult to create those boundaries. Especially, I find now my studio space is actually also shared with my boyfriend, whose studio is right next to me over here, and we look into our living room. So it's all basically, we have a very open concept setup. So it's really, really hard. Like, I can always see my studio. So I'll show you. I have a little book that I carry around with me all the time that has like all my notes and stuff in it. And I literally just have it with me, and I'm like, I'm looking through it. I'm like, okay, well, I have to do this and that and this, and I have to, X, Y, and Z. And it's right there. I could just, like, Matt could be there and watching TV, and I can just work, and it'll be fine. We're totally spending time together. But yeah, it becomes very difficult to separate those things, especially when you're starting out. The thing that I didn't realize when I was starting out was actually how much work it was going to be. Because when you're doing it as a hobby, it's extra, like it can be good, it can be bad, whatever, you can have an off week. But when it's your sole income, it's just, there's so much more to do. I have to be my own hairstylist and makeup artist and accountant and graphic designer and, video production person. The amount of things I've had to teach myself in the last 6 months, it's mind blowing.
I'm sorry I got too busy to be your graphic designer anymore, Jocelyn.
It's fine. But it's one of those things where it's like every time you turn around and you think of something new to do. I mean, I've even had to do a little bit of like programming stuff and just like reteach myself some of those things that I haven't had to touch in 10 years. Because, there's just always something that comes up and you're like, well, this would be amazing if my stream had this. And then you're like, okay, well, how do I do that? And it's like, well, you can pay someone to do that for you, or you can teach yourself. And if you have a significantly smaller income, you're probably going to have to go down road B and you're going to have to teach yourself. It's going to take way longer, whatever you decide to do. If you think it's going to take 2 hours, schedule 4, because you're going to have to Google a lot and watch a lot of YouTube videos. But yeah, it's so much work. And I find that I'm almost working more now than I was when I had the 2 full-time jobs, because I'm doing all of my setup and my prep during the day, and then I'm doing my streams at night. And it's just, there's so much more that goes into it now that I'm trying to almost like, you want to both emulate other streamers that you see and you want to innovate at the same time, because you want to do all the things that people expect from a stream, but then also cool, fun things that set you apart. And it's really hard to find that balance and to channel that creativity when you've got so much else on your plate that you know that you have to do.
Yeah, let's keep going down that rabbit hole, by the way, because it's something I'm quite interested in, because as you know, I don't actually stream all that much. The only thing I stream really is when we get together, when we podcast, and I will run the stream for the live recording of the podcast. But with the advent of Twitch.tv and all of the sudden video game live streams becoming so massively popular, I think there's a thing a lot of people are really interested in, and you've made it part of your job. Where did you start?
Specifically with live streaming, I don't even really. I mean, we started live streaming the podcast, so Gamers In, and then obviously when we started Angry Chicken, we were live streaming that as well. But in terms of actually like sitting down and playing games, I think it actually might have been Extra Life, which is a charity event that we do. It's a 24-hour game stream. And the idea is you get donations. It goes to the Children's Miracle Network of Hospitals, and you just play games for 24 hours. You can stream it. You don't have to. But I think that probably 2012 Extra Life was when I first actually started to try live streaming what I was playing. And it was a lot of fun. So I just kind of kept up with it and got into a lot more streaming when Hearthstone came out. And we started doing a whole lot more, the three of us, Garrett and Dills, who's our other co-host. We started doing a lot more content, and Dills was streaming a lot. So it just kind of was like, well, yeah, like I'm playing with him, I might as well turn my stream on as well, just for funsies. But it was definitely something that was always just on the peripheral. I never had a schedule, never had, any of the bells and whistles that a lot of the bigger streamers had. Didn't even have donations or anything until probably about 6 months ago. So it was all just that, I would say, even more than podcasting, was 100% just a hobby.
So what I'm kind of gathering now, as I'm piecing together a much fuller picture of your life than I feel I had before, is that it's very analogous to my own. You have your income comes from many different places. You have the Patreon, you have donations. Do you do any sort of coaching or freelance?
I don't. It's something that I've been thinking that I might want to get into once I have all of my podcasting and streaming stuff a little bit more settled. I want to get to the point with that stuff that I'm literally just like sitting down in my chair, pushing a button, and it goes. And I'm not quite there yet. So I'm kind of like keeping all of my time focused on that. But eventually freelancing is something that I would like to do. I'm not so much into coaching because I am probably, out of the three of us, the most personality based. Like you and Tills are very broadcaster based. You're very knowledgeable about the game and stuff. And I feel that I'm more of just the bubbly, fun, think outside the boxy kind of personality than I am anything else. So I feel like if I offered coaching sessions, people would be like, but Jocelyn, you don't know any of the things. And I'd be like, yeah, you're right.
Now, I would defend you there and say you're being too modest, because I'm fairly certain the last few months you've been the highest placing host on the Angry Chicken. I'm pretty sure. I don't know how high Dills is. I know you guys are pretty damn close to each other. I don't usually say damn on the show. I'm sorry. So I'm sitting here talking to my friend, and things get super, super casual.
Sorry.
How dare you, Jocelyn? How dare you? But yeah, I think you'd be okay. For our listeners who don't know what we're talking about, a lot of game streamers also make some extra income by coaching people to be better at the game that they stream. So people will, buy an hour of time with someone who's really good at a specific game. Just like, when I was growing up, I would go take art lessons from a local artist, or you go find someone to teach you piano. There are people who want to, out there who want to be better at a game, so they pay for coaching sessions. So.
And I feel like I could definitely give, because I'm more of a variety streamer. I don't stream only Hearthstone. I stream pretty much anything, like whatever I'm into, whatever's new, whatever's coming out this week, whatever's just interesting to me. So I feel that if it's interesting to me, it's probably interesting to my audience. And I basically just stream, and I'm terrible, and it's funny, and people like to watch how many times I can fail. And, it's fine because it's fun for me. I'm learning and they're learning. So I don't really specify in a specific game. And that's why I think that, if I was to coach in anything, it would be Hearthstone, because that is the one game I do focus on because of the podcast. But I don't know. I feel like there are enough Hearthstone coaches out there offering a better version of what I would give. So I think that as much as I have to offer, coaching is probably not my calling. I think I would probably go back to, like I mentioned, what I'm actually trained in, geographic information systems. I would go back to doing kind of freelance mapping. It's a little bit technical, a little bit of programming, a little bit of graphic design, all of it kind of thrown together. And the only thing is, right now, I find I don't have time to try to find and chase down clients. So I need to focus on what I'm doing right now with podcasting and streaming. And then hopefully, maybe get back into mapping later on. But right now, I need to focus. And I think that that's important for a lot of people. Like, it's one thing to have multiple streams of income, but you need to make sure that whatever the product is that you're putting out there is high quality. You have to make something that people are going to want to pay you for. And if you're splitting yourself in too many different directions, that might not actually be the case. So quality over quantity.
Well said. It is a trait I feel I am still learning every day. All right, what should I actually focus on? What maybe needs to get cut this week? Okay, let's figure it out. It's like I'm like lining up my own hypothetical execution line. Like, no, you get a pardon this week, but next week, I don't know, you might be back on the block. We'll see. So as we're winding down, what do you see in the future for you as a streamer, as a podcaster? Where do you want to go from here?
I have a number of different goals. Mostly it's just about growing my community and growing my following. Right now, I'm actually really blessed because the community that we're a part of is really positive. So what I'm trying to do, again, like I mentioned, quality over quantity with the product, quality over quantity of the actual, like, people that you're streaming to, your audience. That's really just as important, because as soon as your audience starts to go downhill, then it makes the experience less enjoyable for you, and you become really not a great entertainer. If you're not having fun, like, people can tell, and nobody really wants to watch that.
So are you concerned about your stream getting too popular, where your chat room becomes too large, and it's hard to kind of control the kind of anonymous trolls that may show up?
Absolutely. That is definitely my biggest fear as I kind of go forward and try to grow the channel. Is I'm at a point where I'm quite happy with the size of audience I have. It's usually when I'm streaming, I'm getting between 50 and 75 viewers at a time, but they're active viewers. Like, my chat room is going constantly. I'm talking to them, I'm answering questions, pulling people in for viewer games. And you can do that when you have a kind of small to medium-sized community. Once you start getting a chat room that's too big, then you start attracting more people who might not actually be part of the community, and the chance of spam and trolls and all that kind of increases. So I want to make a product that people enjoy watching, and I want it to be very relatable, and I don't necessarily want to go just like mainstream whatever all the other Twitch people are doing and kind of bring that sort of negative or potentially negative like clientele, I guess, for the lack of a better term.
I don't think anyone has ever referred to Twitch chat as clientele, and I love it.
Well, that's the thing, right? They're your clients. They're
right.
Who is paying for what you do, whether that is through actual payments in terms of like donations or subs, or if it's just through, you know, kind of non-monetary payment, just by being there and contributing to the chat, being there and contributing to the viewer numbers, or even if they can't be there, they're paying you by potentially, you know, boosting your signal. You know, saying, oh, I can't watch today, but you guys should go check out Joss's stream. She's playing Smite. It's my favorite. Like, check her out. She's fun. They're not paying me, but I'm getting value out of them. So absolutely, I think all of my Twitter followers, my YouTube followers, my Twitch chat, they're all my clients.
That's a really good way to look at it, and it's a good point, because it's funny, you know, if you were just doing hardcore freelance, if you're just working as a freelancer, one of the things that everyone tells you, don't work for exposure, don't work for free, because someone tells you, oh, do it for exposure. But the deeper I've gone down this rabbit hole of new media and doing things like podcasts and streams and utilizing social media tools like Twitter, you realize that while you probably shouldn't do stuff for free with that as your only payment, it is something that if you're working on your own project, you should pay attention to, because it can be a wonderful tool.
Well, the thing, I mean, I absolutely agree with don't do things for free. Like, if you are creating a product and somebody says like, oh, can you come and create that product over here with me or for me, but for nothing, then the answer is no. Like, I am not going to help you plan your podcast. I am not going to help you organize your podcast. I am not going to do your overlay or, you know, host your channel. All of these things are things that take advantage of like my capital, what it is that I do. And even though it might potentially be like exposure, those kind of things, it's not helpful. If there are other people in your community who want to do things with you, you know, and you want to collaborate, that's great. Guest spots, that's great. But in terms of like, you almost have to say like, what am I going to get back out of this? Guest spots are awesome because, you know, you expose yourself to a whole other audience potentially. But if somebody wants to take advantage of like your ideas, your intellectual property, just your brain in general, then, you know, there's got to be some sort of a payment back for that. And that, I don't think, that's not on what I called my clients. That's not on my Twitch chat. That's not on my Twitter followers. That's more like other people who are looking to get something out of me. They're just getting entertainment. They're consuming what it is that I do. I think there's two different audiences there. And so for the second audience, they don't get me for free.
Right, exactly. So someone who would basically be, you know, a colleague or a peer, somebody in the exact same business that you are in. Mm-hmm. Wanting to enlist your services, that is definitely something that at this point, you know, you can charge for, or you should, and not necessarily monetarily, but you know, we're at that point now where we can ask, okay, well, what's your audience size? let's talk about that. And I'm not saying to like anyone who's interested in podcasting out there, just say no to everything unless you get something out of it. Because
but like it can be an exchange. It's like almost like a barter system. It's like, okay, yeah, Garrett, I'm going to come on your show today if you come on my show next week, and you do that cross promotion. And again, it's like a barter system. I'll give you half an hour of my time for half an hour of your time. And that is, I think, perfectly viable. That's not the same as just like, here's everything that I am, and I'm just going to do it because you're giving me exposure. There's always a give and take. There has to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Which, yeah. So the next show we do, you're producing is what I'm hearing, right? That's what I'm going to...
Oh, no, we already did that last week when we did Ladies versus Man Ladies, which if you guys haven't seen...
Oh, boy.
Garrett makes an excellent man lady.
Yeah. And if you're offended by the D word, like maybe I was concerned some viewers may have been on this episode, maybe don't go look that up, because it's 10 people with total sailor mouths. So keep that in mind. Also, in case you're wondering why I don't stream my own gameplay all that often, I have a tendency to go into nerd rage when I'm not winning. So
just a little bit.
Little competitive. Competitive when it comes to video games.
But I think, being competitive is something that I think all entrepreneurs have in common. You kind of have to have that drive and that competitiveness to always want to push yourself to be the best. Otherwise, you're not going to succeed.
I agree. I'm sure there's some exception to the rule there. Somebody who's just like, I don't know, I just kind of wanted to do this thing because it was fun, and it just kind of worked out. And to that person, I say, I'm shaking my fist as hard as I can at you. But to everyone else, I absolutely agree. I think that is a common trait among many of us, and I certainly see it in you. I see it in Dills. I see it in Kyle. We are all, whatever. I'll compliment myself by throwing myself in with you guys as I'm complimenting you. We are all busy. We are all working our pants off to make this work, and I've never been more proud of my colleagues and myself. So... well done, Jocelyn.
Why, thank you, Garrett.
and thank you for coming on. So, any parting words of wisdom for everyone watching out there?
Oh my God, I don't know. Now you're putting me totally on the spot.
Okay, never mind then. Then you know what? Always eat your vegetables. And honestly, if you want to get into this kind of thing, you know what? Back to what we said really early on. Set a schedule for yourself and stick to it. If you want to start getting into this type of business, this type of entertainment, that's all you need to do. It's super simple, and you will be forced to learn very fast. So, Jocelyn, thanks again. I really can't thank you enough. This was a blast, and it was super strange at the beginning getting to interview someone I usually just talk alongside for hours on end about stuff that a lot of nerds find really interesting, and then basically people I'm related to go, what do you do again? So everyone, you can find Jocelyn on Twitter at JossPlays. You can find her website at jossplays.com, and you can also find more of the podcasts that she does, including The Gamers Inn and The Angry Chicken over at amove.tv. Anywhere else, Jocelyn?
Nope, that's it. You covered it pretty well.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again, everyone, for watching. If you're checking it on YouTube, subscribe. If you're listening to it on iTunes, subscribe. Either way, subscribe. That'll do it for this episode of Entrepreneuring. Have a good one, everyone.